Evening. So this is my video on how I sharpen knives with a belt sander. There are many other ways to sharpen a knife. Sandpaper method, tape some sandpaper down, do your thing. Whetstones, machines like the KME, the Work Sharp. I started with the KME, but ultimately I came to this solution. One, it's the quickest, and I prefer a convex edge. The benefits to a convex edge is that the edge is shaped like this, right? Look at it like this. My hands being the only part of the bevel in your mind. It's shaped like this. So as you're cutting through stuff, it's an efficient cutting edge, meaning it pushes the material away as you cut it. So as any knife dulls as it gets used, it performs more efficiently even as it dulls compared to other edges. In addition, you got a lot more meat behind your edge, so the edge holds up longer given any rate of hardness and any quality of steel given a knife. So I prefer the mirrored edge approach. One, it makes things slick, looks good, plus it's a byproduct of stropping the edge to get the burr off of the edge. Now my equipment. I use a 1x30 belt sander. This is a Delta, but you see I took off the side plate and the front plate and the plating and the backing thing, all that shit. It's not necessary. If this, of course, I only use this thing for knife sharpening. But if you have the plating, it stands up right about here. You can use the slack up here on your knife. Also, you're going to want to loosen the bolt and have tensioning ability with this, so it can move and all that kind of good stuff. So the belts, you could just use basic stuff. You can get the high-end shit, but these are what I use. I start with either a 120 grit or an 80 grit if you're doing like a lawnmower blade or like a big old hatchet. Use your 80 grit. You can get these are the Diablo, get these at Home Depot, but an 80 grit. But I always start with a 120 grit on any knife that I make. Then I go to what's called the Trizact Gator Grit by Norton. It's a 400 grit equivalent, but their notation on it is an A45. I don't know if you can see it. You can probably barely see it there, but it's an A45 Trizact Gator Grit. And then I go to, I don't know if they make this belt anymore, but it's a Norax, but it's a U254 or a 1200 grit equivalent. And then of course you have your Surgeon Sharp leather belt. Of course you have all kinds of white polishing compound. But one thing that is beneficial is this thing. It's a belt cleaning tool. It's like a big eraser. And it's really handy with wood, but sometimes it works when you're doing with metal products. So when you're running the belt, like this is like your 120 grit, you're doing really that 1200 grit on that white one, that you just kind of run it across the face of the belt a couple times, and it just allows all that material stuff to get pulled out of the belt, makes your belt last a lot longer. You can get those eraser bits at Harbor Freight. Same thing with this belt sander. This is cut in half. I gave another half to a buddy of mine, but find it pretty easily. Now where I go to get my belts, TrueGrit.com, TRU-GRIT.com. Also, next to your belt sander, have an old paper towel handy and soak it with water. Whereas when you push down on the knife, when you're sharpening, either you have a glass of water to dunk your blade in, or have a very well soaked paper towel to push to just side to side, you know, kind of like, you know, just press like that. So when you press on that edge, that water will draw the heat out of the edge. Because if you go too slow, you'll overheat your shit and you'll ruin your temper. If it starts turning colors, it's a wrap. So you want to be careful, and think that's the materials. Now on to the tutorial. So we'll be back in a second. Alright, so we're back. Now, if you would understand the curious way that I got this all set up, well, hell, I'll just post a damn photo of it. A lot of life's problems can be solved with a little bit of duct tape and some ingenuity. So this is my setup, and this is basically the best way I look at this. So this is kind of from my perspective, my, you know, first-hand bird's eye view, or the mind's eye, whatever the hell it's called. So get your water, soak it down real well. Can't have enough water. Now, the knife I'm going to be using is just some old truck stop blade that I bought for a friend of mine, just some goofy, you know, Chinesium horse shit. So I'm thinking about using this profile for a personal knife or a gift knife for a friend of mine. I don't know, I ain't worried about it. But so I'll set up the belt before we run it, so I'll show you my method before we get started, and we'll just go with the flow. And we're going to break out the 120 grit belt. Usually they have directional belts on it, directional arrows. Go with it. There might be some rhyme or reason to it. So obviously I got a lot of slack here. Don't worry about it. I'll hold the knife like this. I'm right-handed. So the amount of bevel you want, you can always play with it. This is increasing the angle, decreasing the angle. So you understand the terminology. Me, when I go for it, I place it right there. Imagine fitting a matchbook right inside of there. Now, when you're running and as you grind, you get your angle, you set your feet about shoulder width apart, you bring your, use your gut if you're a fatty like me, but set your elbows in and lock your elbows, and when you grind, you always wash down the middle of the belt, okay? And I hold it like this because it's comfortable for me, and then you just watch where, of course, this got that serration, so I'm only going to grind from here all the way out. Now, this is a factory edge. I mean, they ain't cutting shit, okay? Tell you what, I'll get a piece of paper. Here's an old receipt, just to show you that this edge ain't for shit. Right? It's not slicing and dicing. It's just, you see, that's not cutting. It is cutting, but it's not refined. It's not effortless. Okay? Here I'll show you the difference. This is one of my blades, right? See that edge? That's the difference. So we're going to take that to this. So you hold it and you control the angle with your hand you're holding here, and this is just to stabilize. So you find your angle, and when you go, you press, only light pressure, just enough to make the belt deflect. Let the belt work for you. Start with a 120, and that's where your work is going to happen. That is minimal amount of heat put into the metal with the maximum amount of material removed. So you make small contact, and when you do, so imagine it's running, contact, and you grind. So you pull across, and as you go across, you bring the back of your handle out while maintaining a visual of that angle. And you pull away from the belt. Don't let it do this action. You'll round over your tip. So this is real time. It's turned on, right? And then you switch over. And then you do the same thing. Right? Left hand, holding with your left hand. Get your angle right, and then just bring it in. And then you sweep out. Meanwhile, always having your eye down the middle of the belt. Never follow the knife. because what your eye is watching the belt while watching the width of your angle, so you can keep that consistent. And there's a little bit of playing with it and getting muscle memory in. So without further ado, we're going to get this knife sharp as fuck. So strap in, kids. Just back and forth, nice and easy. Don't rush it. All right, you see when I ground, it went right here. I need to work on that tip some more. So I'm going to cool it off just to make sure. Notice that there's a little bit like I'm creating a new bevel. There's more here that needs to come off. You go to the other side, and what you'll look for is when you start to grow a burr, look like little whiskers coming off. Like I need to work on this little area right here to get that bevel right. I'll just go back and forth and you'll be able to see it. So I won't say anything now. I'm just going to go back and forth and then show you as I go until we get that burr, and then we know it's time to go to the next grit. All right, here's an example of incidentally overheating the tip. I went too long, but that's not that big a deal at this stage. Just take your time, don't rush it. There's a little spot right there I need to work out. All right, maybe you can tell, but right here you can feel a burr. You can take your finger and you can feel it, okay? When it's all the way across, you know you've worked out all the little nicks, all the little imperfections. Hopefully you can see the burr. I can barely see it because I know what to look for, but you see where it goes, the green goes to the bevel, and then there's that other little line right there. That's a burr. And here's a little tip. The smaller the burr, the harder the steel, thus more potentially better edge. But I want to work out this thing right here. You see that? I want to work that out, so I'm going to get on that. Pull the edge down. Now you can really see that burr. See it? But you see it's not right there. It's everywhere but right there. So you know you got to work that edge a little more. starting to show up. Pull the blade down. See that burr? You notice that it never rolled over the tip. You can still get a really good tip for your stabbing goodness. Okay, now that we've gotten the burr where we want it, we've re-beveled it, okay, we're going to go to the next grit. And you look, the edge just rolls over. That's a convex edge. So it's going to perform very well as it cuts. Go to the next grit. We're going to go to this 400 grit Trizact quote-unquote gator grit. Now it's called Trizact because they have another type of belt by the same name. The gator grit is it's a stacked abrasive. So when they call it gator grit, it's more of a quote-unquote terminology that's been adapted for the belt, but is not officially called that by the company. Just food for thought. 400 grit. Now at this point, your work is done for the most part as far as grinding and establishing the bevel. This is all scratch refinement. So you're basically working through polishing at this point. So maybe 1 or 2 passes. See how much that's smoother? And go a couple more times. Now be mindful, the finer the grit, the more potential to build up heat in the blade. So just a light touch and just refinement. You're just polishing the edge, essentially. All right, that's it for 400 grit, that is. So now we go, weirdly enough, from 400 to 1200, because you got to think, this thing's spinning at 3400 RPM. It's doing a lot of work for you. That's why there's a concern for the heat buildup, because that's going a lot faster than just moving back and forth with your hand. Now, this is where this thing comes in, because I'll show you. You saw how dirty this belt was, right? That's the color it was. I'll show you how clean it gets it with just a quick, oh shit. Belt jumped off. That was weird. But nevertheless, after just that right there, that's all you saw. That's how much cleaner it was. That's how it can help. And I mainly use it on this belt. All right, 1200 grit. .400 grit shine. Now I can see I can need to hit a couple more spots along the edge. Much better. Pull it off. Now it's time for polishing. Now this is the leather belt. Now when you get one, it's going to have a little fuzzy side and a smooth side. You want to use the smooth side. Now these things do stretch over time. Should it stretches to where this thing will just fall off when you're using it, soak it in some alcohol and then set it out to dry. Some isopropyl alcohol and set it to dry. It'll shrink up. So this has got some compound on it, but it's always good to add more. I mean, and you can see how this stuff just flakes right off, right? So I'll see how well this does before I add some more white compound on. Very light touch. Now, you may want to wear safety glasses because this will throw off dust, and right here it'll throw off flecks of the polishing compound. But just very light touch, and at this point even go a little bit less of an angle, so you want it to just kind of feel like it's kind of scratching the surface. Just let the belt do the work. Okay, clean the compound off. So that is the 1200 edge, right? Let me see if I can find it. It's like a satin finish. And there's that polishing edge. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the other side. You don't have to really worry about a whole bunch of heat buildup with the stropping belt. So you can just kind of go back and forth. Always remember to watch down the center of the belt to maintain your angle. All right, now this is a little dirty. So I usually swipe it off on my shirt just to get the polishing compound off. You can even use the paper towel to just a little bit of wet cleaning. Now, sometimes at this point, the edge may still have a few burrs left on it. It may have a few burrs left on it still. So just get a piece of wood like this, right? I'll move the paper towel. And just with the weight of the blade by itself, you just hold it and just pull it across to take any of those micro burrs off, okay? No big deal. And here's the cheapest strop you can ever have. It's your hand. Passive motions. But you want to kind of scratch it where you can kind of feel the edge where it's almost like that. Because what stropping does, is it folds and pushes the edge on top of itself again. Okay? Sharpening is removing metal, honing or stropping is realigning the edge. That's what you see with chefs with one of those sharpening steels. They're bending the edge back straight again. It's all kind of hopper-jawed and fucked up. You get that honing steel and it just stands it back up. Okay? So, let's see where we're at. Well, that feels pretty good. Well, let's do the hair test. High definition hair test, right? Let's find a spot. Right here. Okay. You can never fail with a little bit of extra sharpening. And sometimes the steel just plays with you, and it might go back to hone again. See, like I was using old honing polishing compound, honing compound. Let's see how it works with the knife, with the paper. Oh, that'll work. I want to see if I can get this thing even sharper. Put some fresh compound on it. Just touch it and you'll see it turn white. Let's see what this does. Alright, get it cleaned up. Dry it off. Little hand stropping. Right about now, somebody's going, that motherfucker's going to slice his shit. Well, it hasn't happened here yet, but it's happened there, Titusville, Florida. That's a story in itself. Ooh, okay. Now I'm only using the weight of the blade. There we go. And that, boys and girls, is how you sharpen up a blade the Arkansas Infidel way. Take care.